Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Extra Shift. I'm Chris here, as always, with Brendan. How are we doing?
Good. Yeah. I mean, look, it's been a bit of a break, but it's been a bit of a while since we've had NHL hockey as well. It's been a long Olympic break.
We contemplated doing something Olympic-ish, but like the games were
They were kind of
largely
hard.
Well, they were also
Yeah.
largely meaningless in large swathes until you got to a
Yeah.
certain point of the tournament. And like also we've mentioned before, like life is a thing,
Yeah.
and so that between all of that, we were kind of like, we'll recap the gold medal game. It's the only game people care about.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna wake up at like god awful hours of the night to watch Italy play some team or whatever. Like that just wasn't gonna happen.
What you weren't just hooked into the Draisaitl experience with Germany and like just nonstop
Yeah.
as Germany could win because Draisaitl no,
No.
they really can't. It was look, we'll talk a little bit more about the Olympic hockey tournament shortly, but like there were a couple of moments where my insomnia got the better of me, and I actually managed to watch some decent games, usually involving Canada trying to rescue a situation they should never have been in.
Yeah.
So, which look, we'll talk about that when we get to the final as well, because I kind of feel like, and I think you may agree with it, like Canada should have seen that coming in hindsight, given the way they played the rest of the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there. So for now, it is of course episode 228. So we're back around to number 28 again. With the jerseys again, I like pointing out, staff always. So once again, we're back with Mark Crawford, one of my least favorite coaches in the league. But 82, 83, 84 Vancouver Canucks, there he was. There's actually a lot of executives who have worn this number over the years. Also, Sebastian Aho, no, not that one. We always have to do that bit every time because it's always. Have you ever noticed? I think that Sebastian Aho has worn something like 5 different numbers.
Yeah.
So he pops up a lot.
Yeah.
And you're like, Sebastian, not
No,
that.
I love that they got onto the same team at the same time, like, and they like assist on each other's points and stuff. It's perfect. Like,
Aho, Aho to Aho, Aho to Aho, Aho.
you're just getting like the whole kind of Nordic team experience of like of like
All of the
Henderson to
Olympic.
Aho.
Can I just say my one again? We're going to sort of sprinkle bits and pieces about the Olympics across the time, obviously. But one of my favorite parts of the Olympic tournament is listening to people that have never announced half of the NHL names in their life.
Yeah,
pronouncing Nordic names. God, it's good, and it makes me feel better about life.
well, I mean, the thing is too, like, they did a really cool little. Did you see any of the like things the NHL shared with the players saying how their names actually pronounce? Because the vast majority of Nordic players, like, we aren't saying it right. Like, we're saying kind of like this is the English version or whatever that we've decided is okay.
And that's something the English Premier League does every year. At the start of the season, the players all go in when they do their photos, and they do pronunciations for the telecast. And then the Premier League also releases that on all their socials, so you can see how some of these players' names are actually pronounced.
Yeah.
No one ever does it, but they tell you.
Yeah, I think it's hard because it really kind of leans on the accent a little bit, and without like really leaning into saying like Mikkelson or whatever, like
without them talking like the Swedish chef.
Yeah, it gets a bit tough.
It becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So we're up to, of course, episodes at 228. Let's get into it, shall we? Because there's a little bit. January 15th was the last time we convened. In that time, there's been a lot of things. We have a trade to announce. I think you're going to want to hear it. The first of the trades was really interesting, actually, because I think it's something we're going to see a bit more of than people anticipated at the start of the season, which is Kyle Dubas being Kyle Dubas.
He's on a heater this year.
That I've remained, even like post him in Toronto, I remain a Dubas truther. I think that Dubas is a very good general manager, and I think he does find the value that other people miss out on. And that's an FSG. I know I mentioned when they hired him, FSG, the way they run sporting teams has always been to find somebody who finds the value that's missing. Like,
I think
minutes.
Yeah. The element that we don't sometimes think about too much with general managers is like what direction they've been given with the team.
Mm.
Like there's a big difference in the way a general manager who's been told like we're competing now, sell everything to compete now, whatever will act, versus who's like looking to be like, well, we want to try and have this kind of partial rebuild, or we want to try and do that, like the way of going about it is very different. And I think that Dubas is kind of doing what like every amateur general manager who runs like a fantasy team or whatever with a farm system or whatever is really doing, which everyone thinks is like, oh, this is the optimal way to be a GM. But that's not
Doesn't work.
necessarily. Yeah, like I mean, in an ideal scenario, you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to try and have like the most assets as possible. I want to try and sell these older guys and get as many picks as I can, all that kind of stuff. But like the reality is, there are other teams with different priorities, and you can't always do that. But I think that he's been able to finally be put in a situation where he's allowed to be like, well, we don't have to win right now, but we want to not have it be too painful when these guys, age out of the league. So we'll try and get, turn over this system and get better.
So I think it's really interesting, and we'll talk about the trade in a second. I think that one of the interesting things I've heard around Dubas is the Toronto media talking about Treliving's time in Calgary. And if you listen to Toronto media talk about Treliving's time in Calgary, there's a lot of, oh, but what could he do? His hands were tied. He wasn't able to make decisions. It's not his fault that they were so terrible. Brad didn't do it. Well, okay, so did you hire him because he was a good general manager? Or did you hire him because he didn't make decisions? Which one is it? You can't say it's both. Yeah. One of the things I find really interesting is that they were prepared to excuse Treliving and say, he didn't make the calls in Calgary, so none of that's on him. So he'll be really good in Toronto. At the same time, we know that Dubas was blocked from doing some things he wanted to do by Brendan Shanahan, who openly told him he couldn't do them or stopped him. Or in the case of, the end of his contract, I think I'm going to trade William Nylander. Goodbye. And I think it's really interesting the way that revisionism now works, that Dubas doesn't get the pass for Brendan Shanahan openly meddling with the team.
Yeah.
But they give the pass to Treliving for Calgary. I don't understand that. Anyway, this trade was Samuel Girard and a 2028 second from the Colorado Avalanche for Brett Kulak.
Kulak famously, obviously, was picked up in the recent Tristan Jarry deal. You can, if you want one of those people that wants to try and like put all of the like later pieces of a trade together and could be like, technically you can be like, oh well, actually the deal was, Tristan Jarry for this and this and 2 seconds and all that kind of stuff. But it is an extra second coming back, which we thought that Kulak at the time when he was traded as part of that deal was like, oh well, they'll probably flip him at the deadline for a second or whatever, and they kind of did, but they also, I feel like, in some ways, like upgraded on him, at least from a perspective of like, I know that there will be some Colorado fans who are low on Girard because he is offensively minded defenseman and so forth, but from the Penguins' perspective, they take on like another year of Girard's contract. Like he has a higher cap hit, and there is one more year in his deal, and obviously that was important to Colorado to get out of that contract. They're probably going to make another big trade at the deadline, and Colorado freed up some cap space in that regard, which is why they paid the second for it. But Girard is a much more useful player to the Penguins in the timeline of their team, in that he is like, I think 4 or 5 years younger, and is like on the books for another year. So I think that makes a lot of sense, for them. Jarry was kind of seen as an untradeable contract, and they're continuing to get value out of that trade. And I think that Edmonton are kind of starting to see who Tristan Jarry is, as he was, I think, pulled yesterday or something
well,
like.
So I did post under. So there was a post in the Australian NHL fans page by Rob, of course, who's a Oilers fan and long-suffering Oilers fan, who was talking about, can't believe that they'd pull Tristan Jarry like when they got it back level, and then they pulled Tristan Jarry, to which my response was, are the Oilers possibly better just playing 6 than actually playing a goalie? Because it just feels like the problem is whoever is in net, just play 6.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think Jarry is tricky because he has these stretches where he looks pretty good, but then he will just get shaky and just be like, you just lose all confidence in him being in there. And I totally understand. Yeah, it's very much like kind of the same guy as Stuart Skinner, except he's being paid more and for longer.
And it's a longer contract, and you're paying him more. But good job, good trade. I still don't understand that trade, and we talked about that at the time. That like you're getting Stuart Skinner, but with a longer contract and paying him more money for the privilege. I don't get that. Look, I think
but in terms of this deal, though, like I understand Brett Kulak for Colorado. I think that makes sense for them in terms of like, you know, they wanted, you know, he was good in his time in Pittsburgh. He had a kind of shaky start to the season with Edmonton, but I think that, you know, for what they want him for, to be this kind of stabilizing piece on their blue line, I think that makes a lot of sense. It freed up a little bit of cap space for them. I saw a couple of posts around that they now have $8.7 million in cap space, which is exactly, of course, Sidney Crosby's cap hit, but I can't see that happening.
I think one of the things I think that came out of the Olympics is that Sidney Crosby is not going anywhere. I don't think Sidney Crosby is moving anywhere after that. I think.
I mean, he wasn't before, but he's
definitely not.
Yeah.
I think for me, like we talked about, you know, as you said, like Colorado fans be a bit down on Samuel Girard because of you know, his more offensive-minded defenseman, but that's because of what Colorado has already on the blue line, right? He represents something that the Penguins need. Like, he is a need for what they're doing. So, like, I think it's a great trade for the Penguins. I think it's a good trade for Colorado. Kulak will give them a little bit more of what they're after there. But I think Samuel Girard gives Pittsburgh a little bit more on that sort of blue line in terms of, you know, possible power play minutes as well. You've got options now.
Yeah, they paired him with Letang today, which I don't know that that's the perfect scenario because they're both trying to kind of do the same thing. But they'll work it out. They'll you know, put together you know, some pairings or whatever that makes sense. And I think that it's more of a long-term play for them as well. Like, I feel like he's probably, you know, going to be there for maybe a few more years, and after Carlson and Letang are gone.
Yeah. So let's get to the big one that happened almost immediately after we last recorded. We speculated on where we thought Panarin was going. And then, of course, as always happens, the day after it happened, I was talking to Rangers, a couple of Rangers fans that I know. One's my brother. Another one's one of my good friends in America, who's she's a diehard Rangers fan and quite well known within the group. And I was talking to both of them about this move, and we'll come to what they thought in a minute. So the LA Kings acquire Artemi Panarin from the Rangers for Liam Greentree, conditional 2026 third and a conditional 2028 fourth round pick. Now, this trade, I immediately put up that I thought this was utter trash and that Chris Drury should be fired. I got a lot of pushback from people going, you don't understand how amazing Liam Greentree is. He's the prospect of the future. He's a starter. And it's like, projected to be, if he continues, that he would be a regular top 6 player, right? But there are some weaknesses in Liam Greentree's game that he needs to work on. His skating is not great. One of the things I would say to Rangers fans who want to hype that up is that at the moment, this NHL is all about skating. Can you skate, and are you good on your skates going up and down the ice? If he's got all the skill in the world, but his skating is not up to par, don't care what you think. He's probably playing second, third line minutes and not anywhere near top line eventually. What I would look at, though, there's two ways to look at this. On one hand, you go, the Rangers got absolutely robbed for Artemi Panarin, like for the skill level, for where he sits, all of those sorts of things. There was also an extension put in place with Panarin as well. Don't forget that. So he is staying in LA. He had the power to say where he wanted to go. He told them that he only wanted to go to LA.
Yeah, obviously that cuts a lot of the bargaining
The
power
other,
out. I'm not shocked that they didn't get a big return for him. I did think it was going to be more than this. Like
the other part,
as much as you can say for Green Chair, like if you consider Green Chair a late first round pick, if
yeah,
you want to look at
yeah.
where a player was drafted, I guess it kind of makes sense. In a way, it's somewhat better to have someone who you know who the pick is rather than just getting the 26th overall pick. But yeah, I mean,
So
look, it's underwhelming for sure.
the other part of this too is I'd been pushing for years that the Rangers needed to trade Artemi Panarin.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I have been on this bandwagon for as long as I can damn well remember. They need a center, trade for the center, use Panarin as bait, trade for the center. I would also suggest that they moved him really early. They could have been negotiating all the way through the Olympic break, right? Because he wasn't at the Olympics. They
no,
couldn't obviously do deals, but they were people have been talking. If you don't think there's going to be a bunch of trades that happen this week that
yeah,
all got put together during the Olympic break, you're stupid, right? That's what's happening. Now, Panarin, they could have wedged him. Like they could have done this deal eventually anyway, but they could have tried to wedge him first and go, we want you to open up the destinations a little bit more than just the LA Kings. Because look, we might be prepared to just let you walk for nothing, especially if the return's not going to be something that's overwhelmingly brilliant. We might be prepared to just make you sit for another year. Like you can just sit the rest of this year and not be anywhere near a playoff. You want to be near a playoff run? We can just make you wait, right? Give us some time. Let us do something. We've got this one in the back pocket. Let us come back to it. We've got some time. Instead, they just bit and they just jumped on it. Now, the last part of this, before we then do a bit more evaluation on the King side of things as well, is Artemi Panarin is not necessarily the sort of player that I personally want on my team. I think that the stain of the last couple of years in New York, and it's the stuff that came out about the things that were covered up by the New York Rangers in particular, left a very bitter taste. I know there were a lot of Rangers fans who were upset with the return, but also were just happy to have him gone. And were like, I just don't like him in the building. I just don't like him. I can't believe the team should have moved him when that happened. They should have just traded him immediately. And I was deeply relieved that the Sharks, who got mentioned, did not go in on Artemi Panarin, because I would have been really, really upset with the Sharks if they'd done that. So I'm kind of happy that he's not there. From the Kings' point of view, I'm not convinced he moves the needle for the Kings.
It's a tricky one. The Kings are in a weird spot because for a little while they were really on this upswing where it seemed like, oh, their rebuild is done. They've got this young, core coming through. They're gonna move, over from Kopitar into all of these young players or whatever. And I feel like they've kind of just ended up back in this middle point again. They
They
didn't
do it every
quite.
year.
Yeah, they're
Every
good.
year the Kings go, oh, they're really good. Here it comes, the push. And then they stagnate, and then they
Yeah,
don't make
and they
the
just end
move.
up a wild card team again.
And like this move is a big move,
Yeah.
but so part of me goes back to, and I love Quentin Byfield. I love Quentin Byfield. But especially looking at like the future of this team with Kopitar and what's happening there, and obviously that's all ending.
Yeah.
Who's giving him the puck?
Yeah.
It's the Rangers' problem. Like I love Quentin Byfield, but he hasn't made that leap that we're waiting for Byfield to make. And I'm a massive Byfield fan. I want him to succeed, but he's just not. And especially when you look around at the other teams that have now gone out and got young centers in the last few years, like he's not that. He's definitely not that. And so you've got Panarin, fantastic. How are you getting him the puck?
Yeah, I think there's some more that needs to happen there. Like I mean they were a very kind of weak team on the wings from the perspective of like Panarin immediately becomes basically their best winger. So I get it from that regard. I don't think that it's a bad move in terms of what they needed, but I don't think that they're one Panarin away from competing.
They don't have like a mass of cap space. They've got 15 when you take into account the LTIR stuff.
Yeah.
But like they don't really have also a lot of assets that like they've got two firsts, they've got 2 seconds. They've got one first, 2 seconds in the next draft. I don't know when we're going to talk about obviously the end of this who's available, but I'm really interested by who they think is going to fill these gaps. Because the other thing
I
we've
don't think there's
talked
any
about
UFAs coming up.
no, well, that's the problem. The other thing we've talked about is this UFA class is horrible. Like, not like, oh, they're a little bit. No, they're terrible bad. Because everyone who's worth any money really is signed. Everyone who was on the unrestricted free agency board came off it almost immediately. So I don't quite get what the next. I know what next move has to happen. We all know what next move has to happen. I don't quite know how. Like that's the question mark for me with the Kings is how are they going to do that? Like, and this office, I don't think has given Kings fans any confidence that they will. Like that's the other thing you hear a lot from Kings fans is they're not happy with the way their general manager operates and the way that their front office operates. They don't like it. It's not consistent. The Islanders. So Andre Palat, 2026 third round pick, a 2027 sixth round pick for Maxim Saplakov. Now you've done that to me deliberately.
Siplakov is how you pronounce it. Siplakov, yeah.
You can't look. You really can't tell that one of the things I teach is Russian history, can you?
Yeah. Siplakov have had like a brief period of time in on the island, if we want to call it that way, where like he seemed like he was like a future top six winger for them. He was this kind of up and coming player who'd been brought over that was all of a sudden slotting in and making a difference in their top six, and then he kind of just fell out of favor this year. I think that there's still some potential for him to turn it back around again and and fit back into a top six and make an impact. So I guess that's what the Devils are kind of relying on. Palat has been this weird like kind of does nothing player for like several years. I remember there was a point in time where Andre Palat was like a pretty good winger, and then I feel like there's been about 5 years now where he is just this like Andre Palat is also there.
He's gone from pretty good to pretty okay.
Yeah. He's like he gets on the ice, nothing bad happens, and then he gets off the ice again. Like I think
he goes out there and it's largely a case of whoop, that was close anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, he just never gets any point. Like he's been playing with it's weird. Like you check the Devils lineup and he's like, oh, cool. Palat's playing with like Hisha and Mercer today or whatever. And then he gets 0 points, has no shots, and has like a 15-minute cardio session. And like, all right, cool. I guess he was there too. And Andre's there as well.
What's he doing? He's skating. He's just skating. Yes, he too was also there. So if you go through, I mean, it's just a weird, it's a weird situation. Like you feel like on one hand, like the Islanders also seem a little bit like, well, our coach can make anyone look good. And can he really? I think, see, this is the thing. I think the Islanders are a team of solid OKs, which is where he does fit in. Is the Islanders are not flashy. I wouldn't even say they're great. Like they've got a good record, obviously, but they're not flashy. They're not great.
They've never been bad. I think that's what it is. Okay. They've never been bad, but they've never been really good either.
And let's face it, that's Andre Palat's wheelhouse. So so to give you an idea, for anyone who wasn't sure, and when we're talking about what he's done, so 2024, 2025, 77 games played, 15 goals, 13 assists, which is he was there. Then this year, for the Devils, 51 games played, 4 goals, 6 assists in 51 games. That is just a cardio session. In 7 games with the Islanders, he's got 1 and 2.
Yeah, he's got 3 points in 7 games for the Islanders, and he's playing on their top line.
Yep.
That
Yep.
is who
Yep.
Andre Platt is. Yeah.
That's his penalty differential is quite consistent, by the way. So
Yeah.
so his penalty differential is consistently -6. In terms of minor penalties taken versus penalties drawn, he's a -6. He gives no benefit. He absolutely give relative expected goals for. He is a -1.5. He's just there. That is as close to the median as you are ever going to
He is
see.
the average. He's the average NHL player.
So look, every league looks for the average, right? And there was a great one, like I used to love the Around the NFL podcast, and they always used to talk about NFL quarterbacks, and they used to refer to the Dalton scale because they believed that Andy Dalton of the Bengals was the absolute median point,
Average player.
right? If you have a quarterback that is better than Andy Dalton, you're good. If you have a
Yeah.
quarterback that is worse than Andy Dalton, you're bad. I think Andre Palat might be the NHL's median. If your player is better than him, yay. If your player is worse than him, you're probably picking in the top 5. It makes sense. I think it's quite
Yeah,
accurate.
yeah.
Oh,
It's the
I
watermark.
mean, yeah. And look, for the Devils, they just have to try something because I can't work out what is going on with the Devils. That should
I
be
don't
working.
understand why the Devils aren't good. They're supposed to have been good for several years now. You look at their lineup and go, yeah, that's a bunch of good players.
I don't even think it's Sheldon Keefe's coaching. I don't actually think that's the problem.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of should be good players
Yeah.
who just don't like. Look, one of the things I'll say is that, for example, I think that a lot of people hyped up Timo Meyer, and as a Sharks fan, Timo was good, but he was never the hype train that everyone was putting on him. And I think that in hindsight, the Sharks are going to come out of that trade looking really damn good with what they got back for Timo Meyer. 54 games played, 15 goals, 14 assists. In 54 games. That's Timo Meyer. 53 points last year in 80 games played. That's Timo Meyer. And you're paying him, 8.8 to do that. There's a lot of should be great. Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier. I mean, Jack Hughes gets injured, and that's a problem. And I think injuries might be playing a part there to some extent, but everyone's injured, so you can't really do that. I'm confused as to why they thought that freezing Dougie Hamilton out at this point was the move. Not because he's great, but because at this point in time, you need everybody. Why are you freezing out Dougie Hamilton?
I don't see how that makes him better.
No, it doesn't make you better by going, well, you know what? We don't really want Dougie Hamilton. Well, you signed him to the contract. That was your doing. You've got to get out of this mess. You should get out of this mess. But you paid him the money. Make use of him. Find a way to deploy Dougie Hamilton. Because I guarantee you, if they do eventually trade him, whoever they trade him to is going to find a way to use Dougie Hamilton.
Oh, yeah.
Right. A lot more effectively than the Devils. So
sure.
The San Jose Sharks did not acquire Artemi Panarin because instead they acquired Kiefer Sherwood from the Vancouver Canucks for a 2026 second, a 2027 second, and Cole Clayton. Now, we were terrified by what we were going to give up for Kiefer Sherwood. Everyone sort of knew we were going to give up things for Kiefer Sherwood. I'm not as crestfallen as I thought I would be. I still think we've paid a fair bit for Keith Sherwood for what he is.
Yeah.
But it's none of the firsts. It's nothing that I would consider to be a major prospect. They didn't go dipping into the prospect pool for him, and the Canucks were trying to get the Sharks to dip into the prospect pool.
And their second is going to be a lot later than it would have probably, everyone expected it to be as well.
Yeah, I think that our second is likely to be somewhere in a mid-second round. So, it won't be at the very back of it. It won't be up the top of it. It'll be somewhere in the mid-second. I can trade a mid-second. And the idea is the 2027 second that we're trading, like that should be even later. So I'm not crushed. I know a lot of Sharks fans were angry. There were a lot of Sharks fans that were angry. I'm in conversation all the time with the guys from Fear the Fin, and I know that Fear the Fin was very angry about that, and they thought that Ian, we've had on the show before, talked about the idea of like he wasn't happy with the 2 seconds. He would have liked a second and maybe a third. I'm okay with it. Like I thought we could have overpaid for worse. We might still because the deadline. But
yeah. I mean, it's not the impact player, I guess, that but it is hard to. I think it's hard to acquire a young player at that kind of point in their career for much less than that. The reality is that they obviously took a gamble on him. It might work out if he's not a big reclamation project. That's kind of what it costs. Like
look, for me, I look at it as they got a little bit better on offense. Like I wouldn't. It's not a leap, but one of the things they're trying to do is just get incrementally better without stripping any of the major assets.
Yeah.
And teams know that the Sharks have drafted well. So teams are going to come knocking, asking for some of those assets for big players. So if the Sharks want to get in on some of the bigger players that'll be available, teams are expecting they're going to give them either a first or they're going to give them somebody big off the prospect roster. I think the challenge that Mike Greer has is to not give up anything significant. Like I know for a fact teams will be sniffing around players like Quentin Musty because they're going to be like, look, he's not there yet. He will be, but he's not quite there yet. So why don't you just give us him? Because he's not on your roster. Like, so you can give us Musty. That's fine. The Sharks don't want to do that. They think that Musty's got a big future and want to bring him through slowly. I don't really have a problem with this move. I'm concerned about what our next move is going to be because we're not done. But I'm also interested, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about the deadline. I'm interested in what the profile of player the Sharks are looking for is. I think, and we said we're going to go through a couple of teams at the deadline. The Sharks are going to be one of them. Of course they are because hi. But I'm really intrigued by what the Sharks deadline looks like and who they think they are. And we're going to find out who the Sharks think they are.
How close do they think they are from making a big move?
Exactly. And do they think they're close enough? Vegas acquires Rasmus Anderson from the Calgary Flames for Zach Whitecloud, Abram Weeb, and a 2027 first and a conditional 2028 second. This is the traditional.
This is the Vegas trade. That's the Vegas trade to pick up.
This is the yearly Vegas would like a defenseman trade.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Alex Pietrangelo being out for the whole season opened up the ability for them to do this, to add someone to kind of fill that space. I think that's fine. Like, there wasn't really anyone out there, unless they were going to be involved with the Quinn Hughes trade, which obviously they weren't. There wasn't really anyone better out there as a defenseman to be able to pick up. I think they did relatively well. They're allergic to first round picks, so
even Vegas, as good as they are at cap gymnastics, even Vegas couldn't make the Hughes trade work.
No.
It was a very specific range of circumstances that needed to make that Hughes trade work. And by the way, just on a side note, how well is that working out for Minnesota?
Yeah.
That's a good move for Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
So, again, I think that's doing everything they want it to. But, this is your annual. Vegas would like to add the name defenseman they can find.
Yeah.
Zach Whitecloud, that's a serviceable player. The picks are the picks, and as you said, they're allergic to picks. Vegas doesn't want to draft.
Yeah,
Vegas would like you to do the work.
Yeah.
So that they can reap the benefits.
Vegas don't hire any.
I like to think of Vegas as John Lovitz's lounge singer from The Wedding Singer. They're losing their mind and I reap the benefits. It's the same thing. Re-signings. Now, obviously, Artemi Panarin, we said before, re-signed 11 million, 2 years.
2 years, I think, is tidy work for them because obviously he is 34. He'll be 35 coming into that deal. It was never going to be, uh, a great like. I was kind of expecting that they were going to have to sign him to like a 5 year plus deal or whatever to get that done. I think 2 years is very reasonable for the player that he is.
Yeah, I think that's quite reasonable. And I actually think the better bit of business was Carolina, like of the two big signings, two signings that sort of happened. I think Carolina has the better bit of business out of those two. Like Panarin, 11 million for 2 years. Okay, cool.
It's the market rate. Like, I mean, he would have got that in free agency for sure, but he probably would have got a longer deal.
But to acquire, to re-sign a goaltender who has been good this season and has sort of given you something that you've been after, which is a goaltender that's under the age of 30 that looks decent.
Yeah.
Like for Carolina, 1.9 million for 3 years.
Yeah, that's good value. Like that's gonna help him out for like I imagine that he is pretty much going to be their starter coming into next year, and that's going to help out their cap situation quite a lot. Who is still on Carolina's books after this year? As I know that this is the last year for Anderson. I mean, Carolina famously pays very little for their goaltending. Freddie Anderson's 2.7. This is his last year. Kochkov is on 2 million, and Busi going into next year is going to be on 1.9. So they're going to be paying 3.9 for both Kochkov and Busi, who are going to be 26, 27 coming into that next year. Like, that is less than what the Oilers are paying Tristan Jarry.
I love that everything we're going to do with this comes back to how much of the Oilers paying Tristan Jarry.
But I mean, look, Dubas signed that fucking contract, but
yeah, but like then he was smart enough to get the hell out from under.
He somehow got out of it, which is even more impressive.
I'm just looking at the cap projections for Carolina as well, because as you said, they don't tend to pay everybody. So like Carolina at the moment still has a projection of 14 million in cap space left for next season. Remember, next season we have the jump of 104 to 104 million.
Yeah.
So that
helps out everyone, really.
That helps everybody out. But like Carolina in particular,
if only there was anyone to sign.
Right, they've had a slight crunch. This really does help them out a lot. Let's talk Olympics. So obviously they took place. There were games. There was a round robin that took place. People played in those games. Sweden once again didn't do much when you expect them to, because Sweden's coaching and tactics sucks. The Swedes need to hire a proper coach.
I don't get it. They're just always like they should be a much better team than they end up being.
I'm always baffled by Sweden. Like they don't make much sense to me. And they don't make much sense to anyone really when you look at it. Like look at what they've got, and you could almost hear like Nylander's comments, like all the way through the tournament, was almost like we're doing really well considering the coaching. Basically, his whole tournament was like, yeah, look, our tactics aren't great, but hey, we're here. Look at that roster. Look at that roster. It should be a lot better. I mean, Czechia and Finland were obviously, the two that sort of pushed on a little bit. And they were the ones who sort of stuck their head up. And look, Czechia, that's been happening for a little bit. Like they've been coming for a little bit. They've been getting better every tournament. There's a lot of underrated players on Czechia. And I think you get to the Olympics and there's something, oh, that's right. That's right. He plays there.
That guy's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's there. Oh, that's right. He's really good for his team. Oh, that's right. He's really good for his team. Like, he's really good. And then suddenly go, oh, but there's a bunch of people who are really good for their team. And Finland are just Finland. And they just, they're always, Finland are what Iceland were in the Mighty Ducks. They're always there.
I mean, look, I think the really unfortunate thing about the Olympics is it feels like every time it is just waiting on this gold medal game. Like everything is just biding time until we're waiting on this. Like, well, it's going to be USA and Canada in both
Well, we're
the men's.
waiting on. Yeah, it feels like. Well, it feels like the only jeopardy is one of them going to screw up once in the round robin to stop it from being the gold medal game.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if it doesn't, then when we get to the knockouts, no one really cares. Now, look, Canada tried to make everyone care by being really terrible in the knockout phase. And by really terrible, what I mean by that, there's a couple of things I do mean by that. I can almost hear people going, no, they weren't. No, what Canada had the best line at the Olympics. That McDavid, McKinnon, Celebrini line was the best line at the Olympic Games. But Canada's depth, once you got past that top line, they struggled really badly. And then when Crosby went out, they really lacked that drive through that lower lines. And so then all the in the gold medal game, for example, Team USA just had to try to outlast the Mac line. If they could outlast the Mac line, they were probably a bit like with the Oilers. If you can outlast that top line of the Oilers, you're probably going to be okay. Team USA, it was if you can outlast that McKinnon, McDavid, Celebrini line.
I mean, look, the reality is that that gold medal game was kind of Canada's game to lose, but that is kind of the case in a one game, thing. Sometimes you're going to get goal lead, sometimes you're going to miss a wide open net. It's there are situations. Sometimes you outshoot a team 2-1 and then you lose in overtime. Like that is kind of what happens.
Ironically, interestingly enough, what that gold medal game harkened back to for me was the 98 Nagano final, where Canada gets goalied in the 98 final, and then I mean they lost that in a shootout, but Canada got goalied all the way through that, and that was the reason they didn't win gold in 98. In this one here, like Canada, and this is not a slight against the US team at all, they would even tell you Canada got goalied. Like it's that moment, and we've talked a lot about that in terms of, certain goaltender who's a bit terrible until there's one game that might matter, and then suddenly he's the greatest goaltender that ever exists. And he does this every time. Like he was not great for most of the tournament, but he didn't have to be. Got to the gold medal game and decided he's the greatest goaltender that ever lived, and just stopped everything that moved. And look, I thought Canada's defense was not brilliant. I thought they looked a bit, they look susceptible to turnovers, and that's what, like that goal that the USA score early in the game, the worst thing that could have happened to Canada was conceding an early goal. And they conceded an early goal. And once they concede the early goal, the US can kind of shut up shop. And if you've got Quinn Hughes and all, they can shut up shop. And, it took a lot to sort of overwhelm the States to get one back, to send it to extra time.
Yeah.
Then the overtime, look, obviously a lot of people had their say on 3-on-3. I don't think 3-on-3 is the reason why Canada didn't win a gold medal. I don't think it's got
I mean, look, it's ideally you don't want to have any medal like decided by 3-on-3 or in a shootout or anything like that. I fully agree on that. Also, if you have a team with like McDavid and Celebrini and McKinnon and all of these guys, Makar, all those kind of guys, you also should be able to win 3-on-3.
You should, 100%. And I thought the deployment in 3-on-3 was fascinating. I thought John Cooper got most of his deployments right in key moments across the tournament. Like there were a few times where he was able to like get a McKinnon or Celebrini over to help out McDavid on it. So they'd start off with a slightly more defensive group in, and then they'd do a quick switch and they get Celebrini or McKinnon over the wall fast and break. And they were really good at doing that all the way through. I thought in the gold medal overtime, he didn't quite get those moves right. He was always like a little bit out compared to like the line changes that the US were making. I thought the US was just more, like, I think the US, once it got to 3-on-3, I think the US were more comfortable to be blunt, I think they're more comfortable in their defense. And I think they were more comfortable that their defense could hold and if their defense could hold, they'd probably win. Now, obviously, then their defense scores, but not what you're necessarily expecting. Although in that case, you probably should have been. I thought that the highlights for Canada in this tournament, I think that Celebrini, McDavid, McKinnon line was so fun to watch.
I just personally felt it was kind of cool to get to see like Crosby, McDavid, Celebrini kind of,
That was great.
like, playing in the same team at the same time, these like really kind of three generations of players, being able to, play like probably Crosby won't play in the next Olympics, most likely. It's insane that this was McDavid's first Olympics. And the fact that they were able to at least get them all playing together, at least for a brief period of time, it's really unfortunate that Crosby got injured and wasn't able to play in the last couple of games of the tournament. Might have been a difference maker, but that is how it is. It happens, occasionally. Obviously, they also lost Josh Morrissey, which didn't help. But look, that's kind of how the tournament goes. But just from a totally kind of superficial standpoint, it was just kind of cool to get to have those different generations of players playing together, because I feel like Canada so often just kind of picks these names, like they have this like such a wide variety of players to pick from. They go, oh well, this guy's been on on the last team, we got to have him in again, this because and I don't know if that always necessarily ends up in the best outcome of the team, but they just have such a wide kind of variety of talent that it's hard to fuck up too badly.
And yet, what I thought was really interesting was for a lot of people who before the Olympics were like, oh, are they going to take Celebrini or not? A lot of those people then became very firmly, well, the problem was no Matthew Schaefer. And like, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, on one hand, you didn't want the inexperienced, the young kids there. Then you saw what Celebrini did and went, we should have taken Schaefer. That would have been a better defensive pairing. And look, I actually think they should have taken Schaefer. But the other one was I did love Chicago Blackhawks fans who were like, if they took Bedard instead of Celebrini, and I'm like, no, you take Bedard as well, and you take somebody off one of the lower lines, and you have Bedard and Celebrini in the same team.
There is this weird concept that Canada has, that they need to have some grinders or whatever, that they still need to have, like,
we need grit.
They've got to bring Tom Wilson. They've got to bring fucking Tom Wilson for some reason.
We need grit. Like this idea that Canada has that grit will win us a gold medal.
Yeah, they're playing this fucking IHF game or whatever, that we need to have like a fucking grinder line.
Now we'll come back to everything else on that in a minute, but quickly on the women's tournament as well. Now, if you think the men's tournament is waiting for a gold medal game, the women's tournament is literally waiting for the gold medal game.
Yeah.
However, I actually thought it's really interesting, like the obviously the flip between the two teams, because obviously in the women's side of things at the moment, Team USA has just been amazing for the last few years, and Canada knows they're chasing, and they've known they're chasing for a while. And Canada went into this tournament knowing that USA were the favorites for the gold. And they haven't beaten them in, I think it's 12, maybe 12, possibly even 18 months. It's been a while since they've won. And they got thumped last year when they played a series. They got absolutely thumped. So I thought that was really interesting in terms of, whereas in the men's side of things, you had the plucky USA team trying to take on the might of Canada. And then in the other side of it, Canada gave a really good, version of themselves in that final, especially after like round robin group stages, and they weren't at the races. But in the gold medal game, like they were genuinely in that. And like they almost, like they were, a minute 40 away from winning before the Hillary Knight, gets involved on equalizing it, because of course she does. And then the gold medal win in overtime with that puck that just crept through the pads. Look, I thought Team Canada in the gold medal game for the women's, they equipped themselves really well. That MPP wasn't healthy. She went out earlier in the tournament, so she was like, again, much what we talk about with Crosby. If Canada had a fit Crosby, like at least MPP was on the ice, but you feel like, while I think everyone acknowledges that, Marie-Philippe Poulain's been the best player. I think Hillary Knight is the 1A, and I think that was really a final where she sort of just went, "Nah, this is mine."
Yeah, that deflection to tie it up late in the game is just the textbook deflection. Like
Yep. Put it
if you
in there,
want
see what
to
happens.
yeah, if you want to see someone like, if you want to show someone like here's how you deflect a, there's just like there was no way that the defender could cover her. She, puts the stick between her legs, it goes up over the goalie, but have never had a chance. Like it is the perfect textbook deflection.
But that's that, and again, that's that just tenacity, and I think it's really interesting, like that difference between men's and women's programs in terms of like the way they play, the style they play. The US
Hmm.
women's team play with this sort of freedom, and they move the puck really fast, and they're just relentless. They are what old Team Canada was for women's when the Team Canada used to roll over everyone.
Hmm.
That's what the American women are now, and that's that collegiate system sort of just pumping players through. And again, they're a really close comparison to Canadian men's team, sort of in terms of like the star power. Then we get to the unfortunate bit.
Hmm.
So, Team USA women win gold, and everyone's like, "Cool, fantastic, that's great, well done, lots of celebration." The men win gold, and the orange one decides to intervene and get himself involved, along with the FBI director, who decided to go into the dressing room. And what did
Yeah,
the
who
FBI
who
director
apparently
do?
is just
But
there to
chug
get
beers.
drunk with players. That's an important thing for the FBI
He
director
was
to be
on
part
the
of.
taxpayer dime, might I add too. And then there's the phone call, and I know there will be some people who will, again, I've called this episode "Stick to Hockey" because you get all of these people, oh, just don't complain about the social issues, just stick to hockey. And at the same time, are quite happy for the men's team to be used as a political pawn. You can't be happy with both. Like, if you want them to stick to hockey, fine. But you then should be saying to the men's team, don't go to the State of the Union and don't be faded by Trump, and don't let, Binnington's going to get the Medal of Freedom. Cool, great, whatever. But you can't say that that's okay. And at the same time, say that everyone else should just stick to hockey. It's one or the other. And you've got to pick. You've got to make a choice. So for those people out there who are quite happy with the idea that we're going to talk about, the men's team should be celebrated by the government, and they should go to the State of the Union, and Binnington should be getting this Congressional Medal of Freedom and Presidential Medal of Freedom and all of this stuff. At the same time, what happened in that locker room was utterly ridiculous. The men's team, the men's team were in an awkward situation. No, they weren't. You don't have to stand there and laugh while Trump makes jokes about the women's team. You don't have to do it.
No,
Right?
I
Be
mean,
respectful.
props to the couple of people who at least kind of made like a 2 for 2 comment. But there is this awkward situation where people are in where they kind of have this awkward laugh when someone makes a sexist joke or whatever. But like, it's
You've
still
also
no
you've
one
also got the
said anything,
problem. You've also
and they
got the
don't.
problem with, there are members of that team who don't only double but triple down. Like,
Yeah.
They might both have the same last name, for example. And the Kachucks are very loud. And I think the other interesting one, and Steve Dangle addressed it in his first LFR after the Leafs' first loss when they came back. Notice why I have to say first loss when they come back. He addressed it and he said, look, Saturday night is the Leafs' first home game after the Olympics. I'm fairly certain Austin Matthews is going to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say quickly, it is Connor Hellebuck, not
Connor
Binnington.
Hellebuck,
Binnington
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
is the Canadian goalie,
Don't
but
mind me.
yeah, I knew what you meant, but just in case anyone's screaming in the comments,
Someone will.
yeah, but look, obviously, I'm not expecting someone in that room to start an argument with the president. Like that's not what we're necessarily
That's not what we're
expecting.
saying.
But it's still unfortunate. They all still turned up. They all still glad-handed and made with the exception of 5 guys who decided not to go. There is still a whole bunch of guys who turned up. Had big happy smiles.
Did the
Shook
presser.
hands with the fascist, and then wore MAGA
Had
hats for photo
McDonald's.
ops.
Had
Yeah,
McDonald's.
had cold McDonald's on his table, and then wore hats, and were happy to be pawns
Used as porn.
for that regime.
Right.
They did not choose to stick to hockey. They chose to side with him.
Yeah, they made the
That
choice.
Yeah,
They made
and
it.
and at the expense of the women's team, who he publicly denigrated.
Yep. And again, it's the situation with that whole thing is, you've got it's a tricky it's a tricky situation insofar as there are people who can't separate where America's at the moment with where they might have been in the past when receptions were happening for teams. And it's a very different situation now than in other situations. And it's not because of a political party thing. It's about the general situation that's happening with regards to leadership and with regards to policy and what that's doing to certain individuals. Not to get all sick to hockey, but Kansas yesterday completely invalidated any license of anyone who's a trans person, automatically making them ineligible to vote, ineligible to get a bunch of other rights that everybody is entitled to, because they just felt like it. And they know that they're going to get backing from the top to do that. Right. So you can't stick to hockey.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Trump celebrating this team at the White House. They were fantastic. They're representing the United States, so that's fair. They go to no, then you're not sticking to hockey. Then they're not sticking to hockey. So you can't say one or this is okay, but this is not. It does not work like that. Now the weird part was the players who didn't go. So Frank Saravelli, who is a repugnant piece of shit. There we are. I'm going to just say it straight up.
Yeah.
Like Frank Saravelli made a lot of points about the players shouldn't be blamed for going to the White House. It's proud. It's not about politics. This is the same person who then obviously the Tim Tebow tweets came back out where he was not Tebow, Tim Thomas.
Tim Thomas,
Tim Thomas tweets came back out about.
He supported Tim Thomas not going to see Obama because because apparently that's fine and that's his choice, but then doesn't support people choosing not to go to see Trump because obviously
also made the point then that those players, it was just scheduling. The whole reason was just scheduling.
Which Elliot also said, but I mean, to be fair, that is what you would say if you didn't want to go.
But this got weird because Elliot then backed up that 3 of them were definitely scheduling. And there was everyone else who reported the scheduling reported it like scheduling is the reason. Whereas Saravelli was like, no, they would proudly go to the White House and they proudly should go to the White House. And look, how that man remains in the position that he is in with the Pro Hockey Writers Association. Like, he is terrible at reporting hockey. He is terrible on insight into hockey. He is terrible at this bit of the job. I don't get why Saravelli still has a position anywhere. And again, it's not one side political or the other, although it kind of is. But what I'm saying is he can't on one hand say, no, you stick to hockey and this is just what they do and you shouldn't be political about this. And then say Tim Thomas didn't like Obama and I proudly support his right to not go to the White House because he doesn't like that president. You don't get to say both of them. Pick one.
Yeah, that's right. You either have a freedom or you don't.
Make a choice.
Yeah, look, beyond the political stuff, like I also still find it disappointing the way that the men's team have responded to the criticism of the their kind of treatment of the women's team as well.
That's the bigger issue for me.
A couple of people have been asked afterwards about and there's been a couple of guys, notably the Kachucks, mentioning that that there's no that they're all on good terms. There's no hard feelings or whatever. They don't there's no rift or anything between them or whatever. Hillary Knight, by the way, has at least is firstly kind of insulted that she has to basically answer for them in several interviews, in that they don't get held to court for what they've done, but she has to somehow explain away that
which she made clear that she wasn't happy that she had to answer for it.
Yeah, but also has more or less made comments that they don't feel so great. The women's team don't feel so great about how they were treated, despite what the men's team wants to sweep it under the rug about.
But then we're also sort of forced to put the whole, but there's no real problem with them.
Yeah.
But it was not said in any way that gave you a feeling that there's no real problem with them. It was said very much in a,
no one is
gotta
saying
keep
that the
calm.
men's team didn't support, that wasn't there cheering for the women's team. Like they are, come from the same country. It makes absolute sense that they were there cheering for the women's team or whatever, but that doesn't excuse them dismissing their validity as an Olympic team in a lot of ways. As we talked about before, like the women's US program has been more successful than the men's program in the time period that it's existed for. Its win rate and its dominance and so forth has been better than the men's team. They are, in a completely balanced world where if you want to, take all of the funding and all that kind of stuff out of it, like they are basically the better team of the two.
The men have been chasing to be where the women are.
Yeah.
And they're still chasing it. Like they won gold, but I don't think there's many people that will turn around and go, the American team is a better team than the Canadian team in the men's.
Yeah.
Like I don't think there's a lot of people that will say that straight up, like player for player.
Yeah.
But
and then to be laughed off as an afterthought that we'll have to invite them too because otherwise people will get mad.
Yeah, and again, actually the players that I felt really disappointed in most were the Hughes brothers. That they were the most disappointing, especially like their mother.
Amazing to go from being the face, the heroes of the hockey community to the villains in 24 hours is incredible.
Yeah, it's like their mother obviously.
They sent their mother out, who obviously has Alan Hughes has a long history in the US program and has done a lot for the US program and everything as well. But to have her to come out to basically make apologies for them, to speak on their behalf or whatever. They've sent a woman out to do the the not apologizing for them, and then 24 hours later for them to all stand around in MAGA hats together as a family.
And like the other one before, and this will also segue a little bit into the trade deadline stuff and all the rest of it. But Austin Matthews, again, as I said, he's going to hear this in Toronto badly. But also, his mother's Mexican.
Yeah. Did you see there was a
mother's Mexican?
Yeah. So someone left a Quinn Hughes jersey outside of the Hockey Hall of Fame today that was defaced as a protest thing and everything. There's a lot of hard feelings about all this.
I think the players have underestimated how angry a lot of people are. I don't think that they thought it was going to be anything major. They thought they'd be allowed to skate through it because they won gold. And they managed to win the gold and then lose the PR war.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot happening around, as I said, I think Matthews in particular, that's going to be something to keep your eye on in the near future because he's going into Canada in a Canadian market as the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he's just been there shaking hands with Trump, a president who has openly said he wants to invade Canada.
Yeah. It's so impressive to win a gold medal and be such fucking losers.
I can't work that out.
It's incredible.
So, off the back of it, Josh Morrissey and Sidney Crosby injured, obviously Crosby in particular. I'm really interested that they kept on trying to suggest that Crosby might be able to
back. Yeah, it's a bit of that play. It's a bit of that playoffs thing. He went out and did a warm up at one point in time. So clearly, I don't think it was ever totally out of the question. It's clearly it was bothering him, and I think that if it was a Penguins game, he would for the cup or whatever, he would have played. But Team Canada is a little bit of a different thing. The next guy out is still a superstar. So it's all right, fine. We'll let this this top line player from another team play instead.
And there's a bit of a difference with Sidney Crosby captaining the Penguins and then someone else having to lead the Penguins. And Sidney Crosby goes, I can't make it, and you've got Connor McDavid as captain and Nathan McKinnon as the assistant. That tends to sort of ease.
He's leaving it in good hands.
And again, that's going to be McDavid will be captain at the next Olympics.
For sure.
And you'd assume that you'd actually assume that you'd probably have McDavid as captain. You'd probably have the rest of the Mac line as alternates. That's what I'd assume. Would end up happening. Because by the time we get to the next Olympics, Celebrini is going to be Shark captain. That's easy.
The
All right.
timeline on Crosby apparently is about 4 weeks, but that is theoretically from the time when the injury happened. However, obviously he didn't rehab it in the way that you would do normally. So it could be up to 4 weeks. It could be less. It depends on how he recovers and so forth. I wouldn't be shocked to see him back in like 3 weeks' time.
Okay, so let's get to the trade deadline, which is now racing. Like we
Yeah.
have, like there's
It's so soon. I forgot how fucking soon. It's a
either
week away.
yeah, it's either four or three games for most teams between now and the deadline.
Yeah, it's
Um,
literally 1 week from today.
I am going to put it out there. We will probably actually be back a lot faster. We will probably do a trade deadline recap because
Yeah.
I actually think this is going to be a busy one. And the main
Mhm.
reason why this is going to be a busy trade deadline is, have you seen the free agency class coming up?
Mm,
There is no one on the
yeah.
free agency class coming up, but
No
there
one
are
no
a
one that's
lot
less
of
than
names.
38 years old, at least.
There are a lot of names available at the deadline. According to all information and sources, there are a lot of names available at this deadline, and there are a lot of players that I think are going to move. There are some weird names available at this deadline. So I think we need to look at, first of all, who we think are buyers and who we think are sellers. And this is going to be fairly quick run through. Toronto are sellers. 100% Toronto are sellers. They've lost the first two games they've played since they've come back from the Olympic break. They've lost. Right? They are not good. I kind of feel like at this point in time, Toronto is going to keep Berube in there and keep everybody in there just because they'd like to get to the end of the season. And then I think they're going to gut it completely. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if they got rid of Treliving while they're at it. I think they might just completely wipe it out and start again. So I think Toronto are big sellers. We know the Rangers are sellers. They've made that point quite clear. The Flames are interesting because I think the Flames are still sellers. They beat the Sharks today, but the Flames are still sellers.
Yeah, I think they've been talked about as being sellers pretty much the whole year, and like obviously they're probably doing at times better than they could, but they're still down the bottom of the pack, and I think that they're still in a position as a team where they're not good and they need a lot of work.
I also think that what did happen today is that I think Nazem Kadri sent his value through the roof again. Like he had a brilliant game against the Sharks, couple of points. I think Kadri is going to be quite. I actually think so. The Athletic did their sort of composites from like Dom Decisions board plus a bunch of others, Evolving Hockey, all those sorts of things. They had Trocheck as the number one on the board. But I think Kadri might challenge him in terms of as the most.
I think I'd prefer Kadri if I was going to be trading for a center.
Same. I think that Trocheck usually gets there because what Trocheck normally is. I think Nazem Kadri is a bit more dynamic in terms of you get a jump. Like Trocheck will do all of the good hockey things consistently, but Nazem Kadri will do something that'll win you a game. I think that's the difference between the two of them. He's better offensively.
Is Trocheck a little bit younger? I'm trying to see if there's a big difference between.
Trocheck's 32 at the moment, and Kadri's 35.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a little bit of an element to that, but I don't think it's going to make a difference if he's just a rental.
Yeah, but one of the things to remember is that Trocheck has a 12-team no trade. So
yeah.
I'm interested to see who decides to. Because it's really interesting. Because like if you were looking at a normal season, for example, you'd look at Trocheck and go, well, Toronto might decide they want the depth down the middle, but definitely not. Again, there's a number of these players that are up where you'd look at it in a normal season. There are 2 or 3 teams you'd go, that's the sort of player that team would sign. But most of those teams are sellers. Like, for example, the one I think is quite funny is that like Dougie Hamilton is the sort of defenseman you go the Devils would sign, but the Devils are the ones trying to
they would already have him.
I don't know. Are there any teams that you see that have to be buyers?
It's an interesting one. Like, I feel like the Penguins have played themselves into a position that they have to be buyers. That I don't know if they're going to buy in a big way. I think that they are going to target, in the same way that they did with Gerard, I think that they are going to target someone, if possible, that is potentially not just a 1 year thing.
Yeah.
They're trying to build towards the next few years. They're trying to, turn the corner in, like, not totally falling off a cliff when, their core guys go. Looking at like the top, 12-ish or so, kind of trade candidates, I actually kind of wonder if they don't target a player like Elias Pettersson, because like I feel like that's a youngish player who had some pedigree, who isn't just a rental that you could recover, get his confidence back, and pretend, or one of those kind of pieces that could turn into gold, in the same way that some of the other guys they brought in.
Pedersen feels very Dubas.
Yeah.
Just feels Dubas. Like if you were going, Dubas is going to target somebody, I'd kind of think Pedersen's who he'd target.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't a heap of teams that have, a significant amount of cap space now. The Penguins have cap space like this year. I think they have about 10 million or something like that. Yeah, they got 10 and a half. They can't take the full, like they'd have to send back about $1 million to take on that cap hit. But they could take his deal. Pedersen has 5 more years. I wonder how cheaply they could get him, given that he's a depreciated asset at this point. But as a 27-year-old, top 6, player, there aren't too many teams that could take on that cap hit. And I feel like they could.
I think that feels like one where there's going to be a bit of someone's going to have to do a bit of a swap. Speaking of swaps, the other interesting one that I found. So if you want to go look at the list that I'm sort of examining through this for everyone, it's on The Athletic. It's a really good composite list of about 5 different lists. Shane Wright's name has started to pop up in trades. Apparently, like the Kraken are at the point where they're like, look, we're prepared to move him to get some depth on the wings because we need more depth on wings. Shane Wright's interesting because I think there's sort of 2 different groups of early draft picks in the last few years. There's the home runs, and then there's the players who were expected to be home runs the whole way through, who just haven't materialized into what everyone thought. And you've got to remember with Shane Wright, the year that Shane Wright came out, he was expected to be first the whole way through. And then he dropped. And dropped. Like that was a weird year. But it's almost like the drop was right because he's not kicked on.
No, for sure. But I think there's a salvageable player there. Like,
definitely. I don't think he's a score.
Yeah, if you don't take into consideration, who he could have theoretically been, he still, could be still a valuable player for someone. I will say as well, Detroit are probably in a similar position to the Penguins where they've kind of played themselves into like, oh, we're actually good, we kind of need to go for it. And they've got a whole bunch of cap space. I think they're probably the same kind of team that could trade for Pedersen.
I think Pedersen. I also think, to be honest with you, I actually think that Kadri fits with Detroit because not for the long term, but because that way they get their sort of veteran for a quick run, and they're not necessarily going to have to give the moon to get him.
Whereas, I mean, I don't love like Andrew Copp as their second line center there. I think if they could slot in someone with a bit of more kind of
if you were the Penguins and went out and got a Nazem Kadri, like that works for me in terms of for the now. And it doesn't mean you're going to have to give $1 billion assets out to get him because I don't think you're going
to. I'm curious what the kind of the cost is. Like the Penguins have a lot of assets over the next few years. They have, I think I saw today, they have 10 picks in the first 2 rounds of the next 3 years. So they've got like their first in all 3 years, and they've got at least 2, if not 3 seconds in the next few years. So they have, they could trade away a second like they did in terms of getting Igor Chinnikov they got previously this year. There's that kind of thing. They've got some excess assets that they could potentially flip if there's a cheap enough deal. I don't know that Kadri. I feel like Kadri's going to go for a first, and I don't know that they're willing to pay that.
It depends if it's a this year first or a future first.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like the contract actually lowers Pedersen's cost to acquire because there are so few teams that can get him, and you might end up with a similar kind of situation with the Panarin thing where there's a disappointing return because there's just so few buyers who are willing to take that on.
So I did say that I was going to mention the Sharks in here, and so we are. I think the Sharks have even though the Sharks are not a lock to make the playoffs, they are in such a spot now in the Pacific, even with like again losing today, they are still in such a good spot with the way that Pacific is playing out that I kind of feel like we are about to find out what Mike Greer really thinks of this team. I don't think he's going to want to move any of the major. He won't move any of the major pieces, but I think some of those veteran pieces that they brought in with the idea of, hey, we need to fill the roster with some of these players. I think some of these players might have some value for other teams, and the Sharks might look to move a few of them to get either the player or assets to land a player. The interesting thing for me, and I'm going to spitball something here, which I know everyone's going to shoot down and go, that's not going to happen. And I'm going to say it won't happen. But if, for example, the New York Rangers turned around and said Adam Fox is available, does San Jose decide that the first round pick is fair? Do they decide that first? This is the question, because they're probably not going to be drafting where they thought they were.
No,
that's not going to be.
It's probably not going to be a top 10 pick for sure. Like, and they could probably top 10 protected if they
really wanted to. But I think that the Sharks, and Hasso Plattner talked about it in the offseason, he wanted the team to get to a point where they could move away from having to go back in. The other interesting part about this draft is that nobody is settled on where the hell this draft order sits. Right? Gavin McKenna, they're like, is good, but he's not what we've seen in Bedard's Celebrini.
Yeah, I think it's a similar thing to Shane Wright. That's what we're talking about.
And again, Gavin McKenna has been first. He's been fourth, I think, the second last one before this round. He was fourth in the rankings. There's no consistency on who's sitting where in this draft. They're the dangerous drafts where you've got no consistency on who people think's going where. You don't necessarily want to have a top pick because that's an absolute lottery. Lottery.
It'd be a shit year to win the first overall pick and take a gamble on. It'd
be terrible to have to make that pick because, like, I don't think you've got a set answer.
No.
I think the Sharks are going to go for a defenseman. They need to.
I'm surprised how little cap space the Sharks have.
But remember, it's little cap space, but then have a look at how much they've got going forward given LTIR.
Yeah, I was going to say, they've got the price contract, they've got like that kind of stuff. Like, I wonder how
so many players that are never playing hockey again.
Yeah. I wonder how cheaply they could pick up a Dougie Hamilton. Like, I can't imagine it's going to be that expensive.
So Dougie Hamilton's the weird one because remember, Hamilton turned down the move in the offseason.
That's true. Yes.
This is now a different situation where there's been some suggestion that maybe he might say, okay. I would rather, to be honest with you, they take a look at Justin Falk, right? Rather than Dougie Hamilton necessarily. Like, Dougie Hamilton's cap hit is a 9, Justin Falk's 5. I think that they don't need someone who's necessarily going to be an offensive defenseman. They need someone who's going to stay at home. Justin Falk will chip in occasionally offensively, but he's not really a go up the ice and attack defenseman.
No, he's been put on a power play a couple of times and just been there.
Yeah, Dougie Hamilton is a good defenseman, but I look at it and go, if the Sharks are trading for a defenseman, I don't want it to be the Brent Burns type. I don't want it to be, the Erik Karlsson type of let's get up the ice and be the extra. The Sharks need someone who stays home because they've got the players that go up the ice, right? What they want is the ability on a power play, for example, to put all of the young guns out on the ice at once and have one defenseman who can stay back there, right? Because they've got some found gold as well. Like, Celebrini obviously has been brilliant, but Colin Graff has been absolutely superb this season, right? So he's like found money in terms of like what he's developed into is really damn good.
Not to bring it back to the Penguins. They kind of need their like Paul Martin or their Brian
No, but they
Dumoulin
do.
kind of guy who just plays 22 minutes or whatever, and nothing bad happens when he's on the
That's what they
ice.
need. Like
Yeah.
all San Jose need in a high
I
action,
don't
high
know that Justin
octane.
Falk is that guy, but that guy is hard to get. I wouldn't be shocked if they could find someone though, like to
I have my wish list is very clear. I would like them to ring the Rangers, and I think that Chris Drury is an idiot. And I think you can probably have Chris Drury, and go, hey, first round pick with some prospects, not good ones, for
yeah
Adam Fox. Like I
yeah
like Mook Madullen, but I would trade Mook Madullen
yeah for
for
sure.
Adam
Yeah,
Fox.
it's hard
Like
to like it would be wild. It'd be wild to have a year where Quinn Hughes and Adam Fox both moved in the same year.
that would be
That would be incredible.
insane. Cal
Yeah,
McCarr's there going,
you
I'm
just get a
quite
Cal
happy.
McArthur. He's like, oh
He's like,
god,
I'm happy.
I
I
want to
love
stay here.
Colorado. Nobody move too fast. Let's mention the big trade elephant in the room. Toronto. How badly are they going to strip this team?
Yeah, let's look at what's their situation with a bunch of guys.
Their situation is a bunch of guys can't move.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know how movable a lot of these pieces are, to be honest.
The other thing is too, Toronto will overvalue what they think their players are worth. Like
Yeah,
there are people talking about Bobby McMahon being a first.
no,
And
not
I'm
first.
sorry, but that's laughable.
No.
Like they're talking about, oh, we could move Dakota Joshua, and we can move Kelly Yarncroc, and we can move Nick Robertson, and we can move Bobby McMahon, and like all of these players are very movable. Yeah, but not for picks that you want. Like,
No, Bobby McMahon, I would say is if you want to look at a comparable, it's that Siplikov deal from before. Like
he's a mid.
if you're lucky, maybe the Kiefer Sherwood deal. Like
Yeah.
it gets somewhere between those two things. He is a guy who can play in your top six, but isn't a star.
He's a second, third line winger,
Yeah.
who's good, but he's not game changing. It's the same with most of them. Like Nick Robertson keeps getting chances and keeps looking like he might live up to the family name, and then just goes missing. And like so, but if you look at it, like I think, for example, if I'm the Leafs, they go, well, we've got a couple of players you can't touch, and then you can have everybody else. Yeah, but the players you can't touch,
Yeah, they're the only ones that I want.
it's Matthews and Nylander.
Yeah,
Right?
if you can't have Matthews
And then,
Nylander, I don't
and
know
then
if
they're
there's
like,
anyone else that I want.
and Matthew Nyes can't be touched.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Matthew Nyes is your movable piece.
Yeah, I mean, look, and Tavares isn't going to go anywhere. He already took a haircut to resign.
Domi should be moved.
Should be moved, but no one who's going to trade for him.
Matthias Michelli, like if you remember when we were talking to Leah Merrill about the things, she loves Matthias Michelli.
Yeah, look, I like that guy. I don't know that they'll change him because he trade him because he is a pending RFA and they have control over that.
I think they might move him though. I think
they
might.
Think they're
going to move. I think the problem is they're going to move a bunch of pieces that don't add up to much.
Yeah,
and they're going to try to move them because they're like I think, to be honest, I don't know why they gave Morgan Riley the no move when they re-signed him, because Morgan Riley has proven that he's not a one pairing defense guy. And you're trying to I think there are some real. The Brandon Carlo move was weird. The Jake McCabe move was weird. Ekman Larson's movable, but probably the only defenseman they've had all year who's looked like he can actually play defense.
Yeah, I think the thing is everyone there who maybe you'd pick up for a playoff run or whatever has term, and it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to move a lot this year.
I wonder at what point somebody gets audacious and tries to make a Matthews move. I wonder at what point, and I'm not saying that they should move him. I'm not saying that he wants out. I'm not saying any of that, but I'm just saying at some point, somebody's going to make an audacious Austin Matthews move.
Yeah.
I'm wondering who it's going to be. I still think someone should make an audacious William Nylander move, and I know he's got a no move clause, but I think you ask. But I look at that roster and I'm like, I don't actually think it's fixable in. I don't even think it's fixable in 2 windows. Like,
No.
I think this is almost a. I've heard people talk about rebuilding on the fly. This is a pull it down.
Yeah,
And
there's not a lot there beyond those guys, that's for sure.
I mean, the other ones, like, again, teams that aren't going to be involved really, like Florida, aren't really going to be involved because they can't be because they're so far over the cap already. It's stupid.
Mm.
The only thing I can see with Florida is moving players out. But I don't necessarily think they're going to move players out. Tampa are really interesting to me because, Tampa are suddenly, as we said, and we actually predicted this preseason, good. So do Tampa decide that they might try to add an extra piece? They've got some LTIR
I think
space.
they will, for sure. Like, I think that they will add a piece or two, as they usually do. I don't see why they wouldn't, add a couple of rentals. I don't think that they're probably going to add a long-term piece. They're probably not quite in that position
I
anymore.
wonder if, spitballing, Tampa and the Sharks have done really weird deals in the past. I wonder if Tampa don't try to create some space by maybe seeing if Ryan McDonough would wave and go to San Jose.
Oh, yeah.
And that clears them some space up to go after maybe a bigger fish.
Yeah.
Because, like, I could see them trying that one. And I could see San Jose being receptive to it. Like,
yeah. I mean, like, I think that they would probably. I don't think that he has a heap of like market value anymore. They might have to pay a little bit to offload that, but
I think San Jose.
that's a good deal if you're in that position. That's something that you want. And you can get paid to take it.
Is there anyone that you think that will be surprisingly moved?
Look, yeah, I think
my other big question is: do you actually think that somebody will try to make the move for Binnington?
Oof. Goalie's so hard. Like, I think so few times do we see a starting goalie get moved just because the logistics of there's only so many spots in the league. Unless someone is in a position where they're definitely going to have a playoff run, but their starting goalie is questionable or probably out for a long time or whatever. I just don't see how anyone takes on that that cap hit. I'm looking at and he's got one more year too. So it's also a commitment to next year. Like, unless you're a team who has both goalies coming off the books, and which like Pittsburgh does, but it doesn't make sense for them to add Binnington.
I look at Binnington. I think part of the problem is that Binnington is coming off. Obviously, he was great for Canada. He was absolutely great for Canada. But that's what happens. He goes to the Olympics, or he goes to a tournament. He's brilliant for Canada. I'm kind of wondering a little bit. You know which team I actually think might take the flyer? Chicago.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. Like, for sure. Like, if you're a team that doesn't have someone who is like your nailed on starter,
like Spencer Knight and Soderblom in net, and if you were going to swap, say, Spencer Knight for Binnington, I think you do it.
Yeah, the one that's curious to me. Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to fit $6 million of a goalie in without. There's so few few teams that could take it. I just don't think they're going to get.
Like Chicago, got 12. Before you get to LTIR, they've got before you get to LTIR, they've got 12.
Yeah, but then also they have to then juggle 3 goalies unless they send one of them back.
Well, that's what I said. I think what they probably end up doing then is you might send maybe Spencer Knight back the other way.
Yeah, but they've also committed to Spencer Knight for the next 3 years, and St. Louis are already committed to Hofer for the next few years. So I just don't. I don't know. If
I agree with your logic on that.
Yeah.
But my counter to that is that Chicago are at the point where people are also looking at San Jose and Celebrini and going, "What are you giving Connor Bedard?"
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think it would be a bad fit for that situation. I think there'd be a lot of moving pieces to get that to work out for them long term. The one on St. Louis that's curious to me is I've seen him showing up in a couple of like speculative trade boards and stuff. In terms of like Robert Thomas, I don't understand if you're St. Louis why you would move Robert Thomas, but if he's available, I'm interested.
I think Thomas is fascinating. Like I think it's the cap hit. Like
Yeah,
the cap hit
they
is
have
big.
committed a lot. They have committed a lot to, to a bunch of guys long term now. Like they have a lot of guys with long term deals on their contract. Maybe it's a caps thing or whatever, but like he is the best center on their team. I just don't understand why they would do that. But if there's speculation,
ironically enough, Robert Thomas is an answer to a question that I ask all the time, which is when the Rangers look around and go, "Well, who's our first line center?"
yeah.
The correct answer is Robert Thomas, but they're now in a spot where they're not buying. So that's not.
He would have been the perfect guy to set up Panarin, that's for sure.
Thomas down the middle would have been the right answer.
Yeah, he is such an underrated player because like he doesn't shoot a lot. But he is just a very smart playmaker. But yeah, I don't know. Like I mean, if he's available, I'm interested for sure. Like that's the kind of guy that I would want to add to my team.
I also, just to finish it off, there's two things I'm really interested in. The first one is the Nashville Predators and talking about the idea of both Ryan O'Reilly and having Stamkos as well available.
Yeah,
that's interesting. The other funniest one in the rankings is that in the rankings for the Athletic, they have Braden Shen and Luke Shen back to back. Braden Shen at 13, Luke Shen at 14.
Collect all the Shens
between the two. Just swap Shens.
Just
swap Shens. They can live in each other's houses. It's great.
It's fine. Easy.
Like, it's hard to find a place to live in Winnipeg. So, like Braden's got one. Luke's got one. So Braden can just move in. Easy. Simple. We've solved the problem. All right. That'll do it for this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Again, let everyone know if you're enjoying it. We will be back probably post-trade deadline with a recap because I have a feeling there are going to be a lot of moves coming up because, as we said, there are a lot of people available. Like we didn't get all the way down to like the back end of like Kelly Yarncroc, David Kampf. John Carlson's still available. Like John Carlson's still playing. Hard to remember, but he really is.
Yeah, he's still there. Apparently.
So there will be a lot of movement, I think, coming up before the trade deadline. So at the end of the deadline, we'll come back. We'll do a recap of this. But thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll catch you all later.